Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my first impressions on this. This is the Microtech Combat Troodon Bounty Hunter, and this one in particular is the Tanto, and I just recently picked this up on a trade, and I don't know, if you saw my unboxing, then you'll know that I have an inherent problem with this knife so far, and it still exists, but I'm also incredibly excited about it because it's a bounty hunter Microtech. The bounty hunter Microtechs have become wildly popular. They clearly are going for a kind of a Boba Fett theme here. You've got a mythosaur on the pocket clip. You've got the colorway of Boba Fett's armor. It's distressed. It even has kind of the design cues from like the milling here on the scales. You can see the rocket on his jetpack back here. It's very much a Boba Fett knife. I'm sure they can't literally call it a Boba Fett knife, but they are literally putting the mythosaur on it. So I don't know. They're not hiding the ball here. This is a Star Wars themed knife, and it is meant to look like Boba Fett. So they've done this on a number of models, right? I had the Ultratech Bounty Hunter with the Hellhound blade. That was one of the early reviews on my channel. You can go back and watch that if you want to see how different my reviews were. I guess they weren't that different. And then they've done it on the UTX-85, which is a smaller Ultratech. They've done it on now the Exo set, which is their little like a money clip knife thing, a little tiny but wide out the front. And I might be missing some, but those are the ones that I'm aware of. So they've done it across a few knives, a couple of different blade shapes. Some of them have been like full serrated Tanto, some of them have been partially, some of them are non-serrated like this. And I think on the Combat Troodon, I've only seen it on this blade shape and the Hellhound, if I'm not crazy. I was thinking the other day, maybe someone's going to steal my idea if I say this out loud, but if you do, more power to you. They just recently came out with the Bowie blade shape for the Combat Troodon again. They used to make it, stopped for a long time. One of my buddies on Instagram, Chuck Nunface, started the hashtag Make Microtech Bowie again. And apparently they listened, because now the Combat Troodon is again available in a Bowie blade shape. I think it looks sweet. I love Bowies personally. They don't make a bounty hunter with that blade shape, but foreseeably parts should be interchangeable. You could get this and get a Bowie regular Combat Troodon, do a little blade switcheroo, and then you would have, in my opinion, the ultimate Combat Troodon bounty hunter with the Bowie. You could call it the Bowie hunter. I don't know, just thinking out loud. So I hope someone does that and I can see it, because it's way too expensive for me to buy another ridiculously expensive Microtech just to swap the blades and then ruin the value in the one that I just put this blade into, and maybe this one as well, depending on if I ever want to sell. Like, it would be a headache to actually do that, but I think it would look sweet. And Microtech, if you're listening, make a Bowie hunter, because that would be fantastic. So anyway, let's talk first impressions on this guy. If you watched the unboxing, the flaw in this knife, I'm going to go so far as to call it a flaw. And I'm not talking about the glass breaker. That's a flaw in every Microtech. The flaw that is unique to this knife is that closing this knife one-handed is really, really difficult. I have found, you just saw, I was able to do it, if I use the joint of my thumb instead of the pad of my thumb. If I'm on the joint of my thumb, I can do it once or twice, and then I can't do it again for hours, because it's painful. It sucks. It's not a good way to close a knife. So what I've been doing is, deploying is fine, still harsh, sure, but fine. What I've been doing is turning it over using my pointer finger, like a trigger finger, and closing it that way. Doing it that way, it works for me. And before a whole bunch of tough guys hop in my comments and tell me that I've got pansy hands and girl fingers, whatever you like, more power to you, tough guy. It's gonna happen. It always does. Last weekend, I had the chance to hang out with some knife buddies, some of whom, well, I guess all of whom were makers. I was the only one there who isn't a maker, which makes me feel kind of bad. But I was with Chris from Cerberus Knives and Jacob from Jacob Ginsberg, or Jacob Creates. And I was also at the, I don't know how to say it. I'm going to be embarrassed if they watch this. The Hephaestus, I don't know how you say it, machine shop. They make all the Cerberus scales, and they're making their own fixed blade. Two brothers who are really good on CNC machines, and they're cool dudes. I had each of them. Oh, and Darren was there. Darren's not a maker. Now I feel better. Anyways, I had everyone who was there, all dudes who are makers, don't have girly little hands. None of them, other than Jacob Ginsberg, shout out to him, could close it with one hand. Like, no one could open it and then use their thumb and close it. I think it is loosening a little bit, if I'm being honest, because I couldn't do it at all before, and look, I just did it twice in a row. So it's loosening a little, I'll give it that. But yeah, no one could do it except for Jacob, and he could do it once or twice and then couldn't keep getting it because it's hard. It really sucks. And that's a flaw. Plain and simple, I would imagine as part of the QC process, as this knife is leaving Microtech's factory, that it has a little signature on the pouch in the box. You can see when I unboxed it. There's a little orange signature in the Microtech box every time in the pouch, or the little plastic baggie that this is sealed in, that says sharp edge inspected by or whatever, and then it's got little initials from somebody there, right? How are they checking the edge and not closing it? Oh, it's getting easier. It really is. Okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit better about this. Anyway, how are they letting it leave that stiff to where it's that much of a pain to close? That shouldn't be the thing. That shouldn't be happening there. It just shouldn't. I shouldn't get it and need to abuse my thumb for a week of playing with it for it to get to the point where it's now barely doable. I'm not exaggerating. It is this difficult to close it. Someone there should have caught that and should have addressed it. This knife functionally, as a knife, is probably, all these parts probably work just fine. I'm not saying there's a flaw in the build of it, but something isn't right for it to be that difficult to close. I have this regular Troodon here now, which I'll be doing my first impressions on right after this. This one came out of the box. Bada bing, bada boom. That's it couldn't be easier. It's great. It has enough tension that I'm not worried about that switch ever accidentally getting actuated. It takes a reasonable amount of force, but it's a reasonable amount of force. This is unreasonable in terms of how much force it takes to close it. And so I did message Jason McCoy from Microtech, because on Instagram he's really cool. I've met him at California Custom Knife Show once or twice now. Really nice dude. And I just said, hey dude, closing my combat Troodon is almost impossible. Really sucks. Do you have any tips or pointers? And I'd probably recommend most of the time to just email customer service rather than DM one of the dudes on Instagram. But because I had talked to him before, I figured I'd do that before I sent them an email and was a thorn in their side or whatever. And he responded back with a video on their page showing how to use compressed air and then put rem oil in it, and said that should help. Try that. Haven't done it yet. I need to buy a can of compressed air and some rem oil. Give that a try. But I don't know. I just feel I'm all for being the type of knife user who's comfortable working on your own gear, disassembling stuff when it needs to be maintained, and I like being proficient and trusting my own abilities. But also when a knife comes from factory, because I know the guy who got this new, he traded it to me, and he had the same issue with it being really difficult to close. He's also super jacked and really strong. I'm glad that this is loosening as I'm talking through this. Maybe it just needed to be scolded on video. I don't know. He had the same issue with it being really, really tough to disengage. And I think that's part of why he didn't feel as attached to this knife as he otherwise would have, and why he was willing to trade it to me. And so, I don't know. I just think that should be on the factory to get it right when they send it out. And the first combat Troodon that I ever experienced years ago was the exact same thing. I had to do this same flip it over and use my trigger finger to close it trick because it was just kind of impossible. So I'm sure they're using stronger springs in this than they are in the little one, and that they're bigger springs, so they're harder to actuate. But it shouldn't be like impossible to do it with my thumb. That's the way this Switch is designed to be used. And even now, as it's working out, it's still really difficult. So I'll let all of that be that. If it continues to loosen, maybe I won't do the air and rem oil thing. I'll just let it wear in. I'll probably buy some of that stuff to have just in case. So maybe I will try it because that's what they recommend to do on their site. The video that Jason forwarded me was from the Microtech website in like their maintenance section, I think it was called. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, so the Switch should not have been that tough. Now let's talk about everything else about this knife so far. And real quick, let's get the other really negative thing out of the way first and foremost. Always say it again. Hate glass breakers, this one included. I think it's dumb. I think it should not be on this knife. I was able to swap in my unboxing of this Troodon, if you want to see. I swapped this. I just got this screw off of eBay because I couldn't find a Microtech official part for sale anywhere. They used to exist, don't seem to exist now. I swapped this replacement screw into here. I'm going to find a way to make it black so it matches. That's great. That works. That's 100 times better than this, in my opinion. I do not like this. I never intend to use a glass breaker on any of my knives. If I want one, I'll keep one in my vehicle or as a separate tool. I don't think it makes sense here. I don't care if you're planning on crushing skulls. I'm not. I think it should be an option to have one, but it should default to not having one. That's how I feel about it. I did try to swap this one at the same time that I swapped this one because it came as a set of a smaller and a larger screw. The other screw seemed to be the right size for this, but when I started to put it in, the thread, like, it started to catch, and I didn't want to cross-thread it at all. So rather than continuing to bear down on it, I just pulled that one out and put this right back in because I didn't want to ruin this knife, cross-thread into the aluminum or something with the steel screw. So just this one has to stay in here, which is a bummer to me. But at least on this version, it's painted to match, so it kind of fits the Mandalorian theme going on. But I would like this knife more by a lot if it didn't have a glass breaker on it. And that goes for every Microtech or any knife period that has a glass breaker on it. I promise you I would like it more without a glass breaker on it. That's for sure. So those are the negative things about this knife. Now the positives, first impressions wise, are going to be deployment. This action is everything I want out of an OTF. It rockets out with authority, and it is a beastly blade. It's actually a pretty thick blade stock on this guy, and it's just, yeah, it is a beast on deployment. It's huge, which makes it kind of exciting. The Combat Troodon is a big, big knife, and it feels large in just about every way. When it's in pocket, it feels big. In hand, it feels big. I like that compared to a lot of OTFs, you have a little more width this way, right? It's kind of a wider profile, and so it feels like it fills the hand a little better than a lot of OTFs do. I like with the size that I can use this as a thumb ramp, and I'm still getting all 4 fingers on the knife, and it's kind of nestling in my palm well, so in kind of an aggressive saber grip, feels really good. Reverse grip is ruined by the glass breaker, but otherwise is good. It's a neutral enough handle that in any orientation, this knife is very comfortable. So ergonomically, it feels nice. The action, the action is awesome on the way out, sucks on the way in. Cutting performance on this guy, this is, as OTFs go, probably about as good as it gets from Microtech in terms of cutting performance, because this is their widest OTF this way, right? And that means you can have a taller blade height in here, and because it's a Tanto, and it's got way too big of a flat up here. It does not need that flat above the bevel to be as big as it is. I would love it if this was a full flat grind, but because it's a taller grind than a lot of Microtechs, probably all Microtechs that I've experienced personally so far. It comes down to an actual reasonable behind the edge thickness. It does get thick pretty quick, so it's not still a slicing dream, but in terms of its actual blade profile for slicing through things, it's pretty good. It's got a decent edge on it. This is by no means like a stellar, amazing factory edge compared to what other knife companies often do. Like every Spyderco I've ever gotten from Golden, Colorado or Taichung has been sharper than this out of the box. Most Benchmades. This is an acceptable factory edge, I guess. It's not wowing me. But overall, it's a blade shape that I do find is more usable for real cutting tasks and not just stabbing bodies like everyone imagines for some reason they're going to do with their OTF, and very few people I'm sure do. It's much more suited to actual cutting than the double-edged knives, which I think are more exciting. The double-edged knives are cool because in an OTF, it makes sense to have one in there because the way that it sits in the handle, it can't possibly cut you, and the way it deploys and retracts, like, it's a good platform for a double-edged blade, but they're just not good cutters. This one is a better cutter than those are, so it makes a little more sense for actual EDC use, although this knife is obscene for an EDC knife. It's just crazy, but crazy can be fun, and that's really the biggest thing about the Combat Troodon, is that it's fun. And this is the most fun one, in my opinion, because it's the bounty hunter, because it appeases the Star Wars nerd in me and probably many others. It just makes it extra exciting, extra fun, and like, that's okay if that's why you want a knife. That's why I wanted this knife, because it's exciting and cool, and I can watch Mandalorian with the Boba Fett scenes, and I can flick this while I do and feel some extra engagement, nostalgia. Like, it's just cool. That's what it does best, and it hits that ball out of the park. So hopefully it will continue to loosen. Hopefully by the time I do my full review, I'm getting it. Every now and then, now I'm getting it. So it is a little looser than it was out of the box, or my thumb is gaining strength. No, I don't know. I think it's genuinely loosening a little bit. Hopefully by the full review, it's loose enough that I can do this with it. Because that, in my opinion, is what I should be able to do with an OTF. That's the good example. This is the bad one. Yeah, anyways, I guess that's where we're at with this one. Very cool, very fun, very exciting. Some glaring issues right out of the box. Mostly the action, and the glass breaker is always going to be an issue. I hope Microtech will start offering replacement screws again. There are old listings, like on Blade HQ and stuff, that it used to be an option to buy a glass breaker delete screw. And it's super simple. It's not like it's rocket science, right? I hope that they start doing that again, because that makes me want every one of their knives more if I can not have this on it. Anyway, that's where we're at. Thanks, guys. I will see you on the next one.